This is the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast, a podcast brought to you by two physical therapists devoted to helping physical therapists and other healthcare providers become better educators to patients, students, the community, and each other by interviewing prominent and passionate people within the realms of healthcare and education. The Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast is intended literally for educational and entertainment purposes only. No clinical decision making should be based on only one source, and therefore this podcast should not be used as personal medical advice. While care has been taken to ensure accuracy, occasionally mistakes and factual errors can be present, as we are only human. This is our journey on the road to becoming better educators, so get ready with your pen and paper as class is about to begin. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. And for today's episode, we're actually not going to be interviewing any guests, but instead, we're going to be having our first podcast reflection. So F. Scott and I are coming on today to kind of really talk about overall kind of our journey throughout this whole podcasting process and kind of what we've learned throughout the process, how we've changed throughout the process, and kind of where we want to go with it next. And you know, kind of before we get into that, we really, truly, from the bottom of our hearts, from all of us here at HET, we really owe everything to our listeners and to our guests. And, you know, I got to give a shout out to everyone here because the guests that we've had on have been absolutely fantastic. I mean, I have learned a ton, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. But all of our guests have been amazing, and the true altruism that they all have demonstrated with coming on, devoting their time, providing great content, and really helping us along the way. And even from our listeners, you know, with the support that we've gotten. And Scott, I don't know about you, man, but I never, ever thought when we kind of were just kind of planning this that this would ever have been close to what it is now.
Yeah, no, I say this time and time again, but, you know, we're really not doing too bad for two guys just sitting around talking about healthcare education, man. It's been quite the tremendous outpouring and show of support from, like you said, both the listeners and the guests. And we really just want to pay it back and really take things up a notch for our next act.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, with our original goal, kind of with doing this podcast, because really, ultimately, the big thing is we wanted to be able to help any student or any healthcare provider, for that matter, who had an interest in kind of pursuing a role within education, you know, whether that be maybe an educator in the clinic, to patients, to a student, or they want to be a teacher, whether that be in academia, or whether that is going to be teaching a CEU course, or, you know, whatever the educational avenue may be, to cover it so that those students or that individual really kind of knows or has an at least general idea of how to best address that and kind of hit that topic. Also, too, though, I got to be honest, man, I know that when we first kind of came out, we both were kind of going through a identity crisis in terms of, well, where are we going to go with this? What do we want to do overall with ourselves? And, you know, you and I really had not a specific idea of where we wanted to go with that. And kind of part of this is actually trying to learn from those that really do have this input to really kind of help figure out some good knowledge to help us make a better decision personally and in our professional and personal development. And we're not the only ones that honestly probably have that same mentality. There's probably others that are interested in the education realm or, you know, at least want to hear more about it to kind of help get in that role. So that's part of it. But also, you know, we also realize that, you know, we want to bring up some discussions that can really give some positives, but also some constructive criticisms of kind of the current educational status. And not to say that that's any single person or organization's fault. By no means. We're just realizing that, you know, with the educational system, there are pros, there are cons. How can we really learn about the system to really best overall figure out how can we improve it to make it better for tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said, you know, we were kind of going through a bit of an identity crisis. I've been working on my educational doctorate for a couple of years now, and I'm kind of winding down on that. And I was really questioning what I wanted to do with an EDD, if anything at all. And, you know, every kind of twist and turn that my life took led me away from academia, and that keeps, you know, coming up, and it seems to be a common theme for me. But the one thing I will say is through interviewing all of these guests and through just kind of learning along the journey, I've taken one or two really huge takeaway messages from each and every guest we've had and each and every episode, and it's really helped kind of give me a little more direction. It's given, me a little bit more vision and insight into different options that are out there. I feel like there's so many avenues to this podcast that are open to us now. Like, you can learn about clinical expertise and educational aspects in the clinic. You can learn about continuing education. You can learn about academia. You can learn about, what doctors are doing, what nurses are doing, what pharmacists are doing. There's just, this thing is really starting to grow and gain momentum in a way that I frankly didn't ever see happening. So, I am very thankful because, like I said, I'm starting to gain a little vision and gain a little grasp on directions that I want to head in the realm of healthcare education. So super thankful for you for seeking me out for this. And, I've got a list that goes a mile long of people that have kind of helped us along the way with some specifics. But, it's really been one of those journeys that we had a good idea and, we had the right mindset behind it, but I never thought it would take off to this level. So, now it's just a matter of buckling up and enjoying the ride, I think.
I love that take, and I think that, you're right. I think we definitely have had a lot of help along the way. And frankly, if it wasn't for Ben Fung, you and I probably wouldn't have connected.
Yeah,
and we probably wouldn't be here at this moment. So I got to give him a big shout out. And,
yep.
And Scott, I got to ask, because you kind of talked on this a little bit, but in kind of some of the direction that you've learned, but, personally and professionally, how have you changed since we started the podcast?
Well, the first one, right? I've been a PT now over 10 years, and in the last year, my network has probably grown tenfold. And I mean, that's after 10 years of meeting people, moving around city to city, doing a bunch of different things, getting involved in stuff. I literally leave each episode with 4 or 5 new contacts based on people that I need to get in touch with because the guests recommended them, or, authors I need to look up because of an article or two they recommended, or, just amazing people sharing their stories and then telling us about amazing people that have influenced them. And just seeing how fast that social network grows. Like I said, I've met more people in the last year than I have in my 9 years prior. So, I think that's one of the biggest aspects of growth for me since starting this podcast. I can't even imagine where we were 7, 8 months ago, and yet now the amount of doors that have opened for us and the amount of opportunity that have opened for us just because of, like I said, great guests, great people just spreading their knowledge and doing the right thing to try to advance healthcare fields. It's really been amazing. And like I said, it's been so impactful for me. I just feel blessed to even, have been able to interview half of these people. I mean, some of them are heroes of mine. So it's, I feel like starstruck at times, but it's a really cool feeling.
And I also feel, Scott, that this podcast has really also personally for me, really increased my confidence overall, because I was actually really terrified initially the first few episodes that we did, because I was like, oh my gosh, what do I say? I'm actually talking to these people. Heart rate's going up. Oh my gosh, I'm going to freeze. And I was even struggling with live videos, man. But after doing it enough times, I feel like I've gotten a lot better at it. And I still have a lot to improve on. And I know I've got some little interviewing and some verbal tics that I need to work on. But I feel like overall, I feel like I've definitely made some strides in that department.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. My whole goal for 2018 is to just really be more in the moment and try to become more conversational. I think, like you said, early on we were very rigid, very scripted and structured, but I think we've come a long way. I think just getting comfortable doing it enough. I mean, gosh, I can't even tell you how many episodes we've recorded at this point. It's, we've got so many lined up and ready to roll. So, I think the repetition and the practice, it just gets you more comfortable with things, and it really helps you in the bigger picture of life and just communication skills, which I think that's definitely something you're going to see a lot of in the next 5 to 10 years in healthcare as well, is the soft skills, really making taking a hard look at our soft skills. So I think that's going to be definitely something we see as buzzwords in the future.
Oh, amen. At least from my end, man, I think back to where my mind really was. And frankly, in one way it was kind of cynical. And I'll expand on that a little bit more, because ever since I came out of school, and when I'm in the intro episode where I kind of talked about, how I got frustrated with, not making a difference clinically, and I started to kind of go towards burnout, and then I tried for residency, didn't get it, and I felt like I was down in the dumps. And then I finally, through podcast and then learning these other things, finally was able to kind of get pulled out of it little by little. But I'm not going to lie, kind of in the back of my mind, I was kind of really frustrated, honestly, with the whole process with school, because I was like, if I'm paying this much money, I'm not expecting to come out as an expert, but I should at least be able to enter into the profession and not burn out that quick because I'm not making a clinical difference. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to say that that's anyone or any organization or any individual's fault by any means, but I was kind of frustrated deep down. I was like, if I'm paying all this and I'm getting this out of it, what is going on? Like, I want to learn, frankly, what does this entail so we can kind of help promote or kind of learn some change to kind of help better it. But going through the episodes and really learning, from all these different guests, and some of the big ones that really at least changed my opinion or at least kind of gave me a different insight to really consider regarding this was Sean Childs, Todd Davenport, and then especially Bob Rowe and Michael Wong. Because, you're really hearing it from the administrator and from the educator's perspective. And what really stuck out to me, I don't know how you thought about this, Scott, but when I heard Mike Wong's take when he basically said, I think I'm going to come out and I see all this wrong with education, and I'm going to teach them all the stuff I learned in residency fellowship, all these advanced tricks, and they're going to do so good. And then he finally started to say, but then you start to realize something when you first start off. It's not more and more and more. It's less, and how can I get them to be the most independent and best that they can be? And just hearing that insight from this guy he basically, before he went in, was like, that is exactly what I'm thinking. And he's just going at it, and he's just saying, this is what I've come to learn, and here's why I think that. And you're like, and I'm just like, oh, this guy's onto something.
Yeah, his whole episode, the two-parter there, it was really a classical case of being able to connect the dots, especially for students. And I think his thesis was, we're not doing a great job of that right now in PT school even. We're very segmented in the way we teach topics, and maybe we just need to reevaluate and look at how we can go about taking a step back, looking at that 30,000-foot view, and taking a holistic approach to, say, maybe a shoulder or a knee or a back or a neck, and progressing students along the timeline that way. And that, that was pretty powerful stuff for me. Like I said, I had my jaw open most of that episode, just because he was, really making me think and analyze the way that we currently handle curriculum. And I haven't seen that strong of an opposition yet to our current methods. So, that was a fun one for me. But I think, really, when you see a lot of these research studies out there on expertise and experts, right, one of the major aspects that sets an expert apart from a novice is reflection, right? And taking the time to go back, and this has been a little bit of a common theme in a lot of the episodes as well. All of these people who are experts in their field and in their niche are really taking the time to go back and reflect and look back and think about the things that made them better or, didn't maybe work and a different direction they need to head, and it's that critical reflection and feedback, even if it's a self-feedback loop, that really pushes you to the next level and makes you excel and really pushes you into that level of expertise. So I kind of have a question for you, Brendan, then, is taking this episode as a reflection and as a look back at everything we've done, what are some things that you want to start working on for the next level here for the podcast? Which direction do you want to head to make it a better place to be and a better place to come and learn?
In terms of from the podcast specifically, I know that some big things that at least we're looking to really do is ultimately just really continue to push out our message to really just facilitate some change in these discussions and to hit a wide variety of folks. Now, with that, in terms of where I kind of want to go in terms of things, I just really want to continue to really talk with, fantastic guests, but also kind of use this platform to really be able to connect to many different circles, not just PT-wise, but healthcare. And that's why we're starting to get into that, kind of with doctors, nurse practitioners, speech path, personal trainers, strength coaches, and the list goes on and on. Because at the end of the day, we called it the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast for that reason.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I love how we, have talked about this on numerous episodes, but breaking down the silos, I think that's a common theme you're going to see over these next couple years of healthcare, and really just trying to get a lot of interaction amongst other providers. And what better place to start learning about all the providers that are out there and what they do and how they learn than literally just going to the educational source and how they come up and how they get accredited and how they get licensed, and really just going from there and learning about that process for them.
And I think, I'm going to back up just a little bit when kind of going back, because you talked about this before about, the big concept of reflection. And, and honestly right now, when we first started with doing this podcast, my mindset at the time was really kind of more having a negative view towards my educational development and such. But now, honestly, where I look back at it now, when I really take time to look at it from a 30,000-foot view, I actually think it overall made me better overall. And honestly, here's why I think that. I think with school, they really did a good job of really kind of teaching us how to learn and kind of develop and research stuff on our own. And realizing, of course, that I think I had the expectation kind of in school was that stuff was going to be given to me. Like, I'm paying all this, I'm expecting this knowledge and this to kind of be fed to me because I'm paying for it and all this kind of stuff. And I had the wrong mindset at the time. I realized that. I was like, I was flat out wrong. And I have no shame saying that. But now I've really learned that, what? Me having to go and learn through that struggle, going through all those things, like right now, I don't regret burning out. I honestly don't at all, because I think it really pushed me to make the change that I need to and really develop and really learn many different aspects and realize that, hey, I can do this on my own. I can figure this out. They showed me kind of basically the basics, what I need to know. But I'm going to keep pushing forward, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to find a way around it. Because I think, man, that's partially why we've kind of come to where we are here with the podcast, just keeping that same mindset.
Yeah, I think once you come to that self-realization and self-actualization, that's when some real learning can occur. Because, when you realize that you might go to a course on a Friday and Saturday, and then, I learned a ton of stuff, got a lot of information. But until you take the time to synthesize and process what went on, maybe that Sunday or Monday, on your own, that's when it really starts sinking in and getting into that next level of learning, where you're higher up the holon, where you're, trying to come up with your own thoughts and ideas on what you took in and what you learned. So I think that's a very important realization and a very important point in the learning process.
Amen, man. And I think, it's interesting, too, because I know we've kind of talked about, what our thoughts have been kind of just overall about how we feel like education can improve and such. And, I still stand by my point that I just said before, but I think the big thing that I also thought of, too, is that, I think that some stuff that we learned in school, personally, should not have been emphasized as much that it had been. Like learning that much about modalities, throwing a lot of information that in some ways is not the most relevant. And I realize that they have to make accreditation for CAPTE and they have to put what's on the board exam to pass because that's how they get through. I understand that. But I really have seen the development, especially with South College and Baylor, how they're really shaping and changing that curriculum to kind of better meet the needs of the profession and kind of how practice is now. So I'm curious, kind of, man, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it just comes down to a like you said, kind of an altruistic take on things, right? If the program you went through didn't feel like it gave you everything you needed, well, that's fine, but then you've got to go and find a way to make it better and make, the experience and the learning better for the next generation of PTs coming out after you. And that was my biggest roadblock, was I didn't like a lot of the direction that things were heading in for, the world of academia, specifically in physical therapy realm. But, I was just kind of bitter and angry about it. And I didn't feel like as one person, I could make a difference. I could go into any given PT program and really rattle the cage and shake things up and change the views and the way that they were doing things. I just didn't feel like I could do that. Now I get the sense that I don't necessarily have to do that, as long as I'm there to fill in some of the gaps and the holes and build the bridges to make some of the connections out in the world of physical therapy. If somebody comes out of school as a new grad and they may have some weaker skills in one area or another, be there to bolster them and help them and bring them to a point where they better themselves. And if you can't do it, direct them to who can. Hey, I'm not really great at this technique, but here's a CEU course that I really highly recommend. A lot of people I know have gone through it. They've gotten really good results. Check this out, Or, I think if you really want to teach, you got to get some educational courses underneath your belt, and then, start volunteering as a lab instructor or, as a guest presenter or something like that. Like, get some real experience, see if it's worth it, see if it's something that you want to pursue, and then move on from there to the next step if it is. It really is just about, again, having a good heart, doing the right thing, and just trying to help people in the healthcare field really find themselves and find their direction, find their way. So thank you to you for finding me out for this thing. This has definitely been an experience, and like I said, I can't wait to see what the next couple years have to bring.
I couldn't agree more. And Scott, I'm kind of curious, where are you kind of looking now personally and kind of professionally? Like, what are you thinking based on what your gut reaction is now? Where are you thinking that you're going to go in the next few months or even the next year?
Well, like I said, the dissertation's got to get finished, so I'm going to try to wrap that up here shortly in the next month or so. And then once that's done, I really think I want to just take a little bit of a breather from education specifically. I don't know how long, just a little while. I'd like to read a couple of books that are not research articles and are not textbooks for a while. But I think the overall goal has changed a little bit in that I'm feeling a little more open and I would say more positive toward dabbling in the world of academia. I don't think I would mind teaching an adjunct course here or there for, one or two schools, one semester here or there, and just kind of see how that goes and try it out and really get my feet wet, get some experience, see if it's something that I could possibly do down the line. I think my greatest interest to date has been continuing ed stuff. I think a lot of the guests that we've had that have been talking about continuing education have really kind of lit my fire and my passion for education in a setting that, to me, seems to make the most sense. Continuing education seems to be a hotbed for me right now. I think that's a possibility down the line for sure. But then I also still have this underlying want, need, and desire to educate the masses, on healthcare literacy and just trying to do everything I can to help society learn more about health. Because I myself am not the pillar of great health, so I'm on my own journey as well, trying to get healthy and trying to do the right things. And luckily, I've met a lot of great people over the last year or two, like I said. So I've got a great support system now and people that I can go to and turn to and ask questions about, just about anything. And kind of through that journey, I've been able to, drop a bunch of weight. I've been able to get off my only medication that I was on was for blood pressure, and that's all done now. So I literally am the healthiest I've been probably in 10 years. So I still have a long ways to go, but I feel, like I said, I kind of teeter on the line between healthcare practitioner and healthcare consumer very, very easily. So, given my wife's history of type 1 diabetes, our family in general has a lot of health concerns. And so anything that I can do to help educate the masses to how to deal with health issues, that seems to be a really big passion for me as well. So I'm hoping to kind of do a little bit more with Mike Eisenhart and the APHPT group as well.
And I think that's great, and that's so inspiring to hear, your kind of your background and kind of your development in that regard too. And I agree, man. I think you're doing very good in terms of with educating the masses. I know you've kind of done that little podcast side hustle with Jerry Durham and Mark Milligan on direct access, to really not only for clinicians, but that's kind of also educating the public too about this issue and kind of how it affects them.
Yeah, that was a pretty fortunate kind of series of events. I mean, a year ago, we were in Atlanta, which, wasn't necessarily the greatest access laws, but they had, forms of direct access. And we moved to Texas, and all of a sudden, boom, that gets taken away. And it's like shocking. It was eye-opening to me. So, again, I kind of played the healthcare consumer role in this one, and just really got ticked that my rights were kind of almost being violated, that I couldn't just walk in and get physical therapy if I needed it, because I have needed it before. And I've always just been able to, walk into my clinic or a friend of mine's clinic and get treated, and it's never been a problem. Now there's some pretty big hurdles. So, I just think at the very least, even if you aren't too concerned about direct access, I think you at least need to know what the current status is as a citizen. I feel like you just need to know where you stand, especially in the states of Texas, Illinois, and Missouri. I think the citizens of those states really need to know where their rights are and how things could change if they really want to take a stand and do the right thing. So I'm looking forward to your mini-series as well coming up. Again, we've both kind of found little niches that have really worked out for us. So tell us a little bit about what you got coming up.
Hey, Scott, it's actually all you that actually inspired me to do that. It's like, oh, that's a good idea to kind of make a little podcast mini-series from it. And, then I thought about it. I'm like, what do I want to help contribute to? And for me, honestly, the answer is, of course, DPT, clinical education, and kind of the post-professional journey for physical therapists. So what I'm going to be doing and what I've kind of done thus far is I've reached out to a few people that kind of have different roles within different positions to really kind of overall kind of get a panel discussion going on that really talks about kind of what the scope of the problem is right now within clinical education and, within residency fellowships and these different ways of post-professionalism to kind of first kind of get the scope of what's going on. But then also with talking through each of these guests to kind of get a kind of a progression of kind of where are we at right now and how is this going to affect each other? Because we all wear different hats. And to give some context, kind of right now, I've reached out to 3 people and I've received confirmation from 2 of them. So the first person that I reached out to is John Childs, who is the CEO of Evidence in Motion. And the second person I got confirmation from was Dr. Bob Rowe, who is on the APTA board of directors. And honestly, Bob and John are some of the top, most passionate leaders in this realm that I'm aware of. But I wanted Bob to come on because, with his role with being on the board of directors and with them kind of working towards and working on the recommendations from the best practices in physical therapy clinical education task force, this guy is, not only such a passionate guy, but he also has the real inside scoop of what's going on and how we're overall progressing from the organization to really make this a change. So I thought having his perspective kind of from that standpoint would be very valuable to share. But also I reached out to John Childs because, with John Childs being in, ahead of a residency fellowship program, I think that their perspective, especially to hit the residency fellowship route, their perspective from someone on the inside really does need to be considered because we can't just view it from one angle. We have to talk with people in different roles to really kind of fine-tune the best solution to help everyone. And the third individual is one whose name I won't mention yet, but this individual kind of works within academia and is also a very prominent educational researcher. So what we're trying to really do is just bring all these perspectives together to really kind of talk about updates on kind of what's going on within each of their realms and kind of how we can continue to build together to best solve the problem from everyone.
Yeah, I really look forward to that because that's one aspect of my career that I was really, I wouldn't say regretful about, but I would say maybe a little bit down on when I first got out of school. Residency wasn't even an option for me just because, my family background. My dad had just passed away. I just wanted to travel and get out and see the country a little bit and just kind of find myself. So, I didn't hop on the residency train right away. And over the last couple of years, I've started to maybe regret it a little or feel down. But then I've kind of gotten renewed lately about possibly pursuing a fellowship down the line. And then, we've started this podcast, and now my mind has gone a bunch of different directions from there. But, it's interesting seeing how residency and fellowship are beginning to morph and change a little bit. So, I'm really looking forward to your little mini series there. I think it's going to be great. It's going to really help a lot of people make some really good decisions in the future.
I mean, we got some great people already confirmed on it, and I'm just so pumped to kind of hear what they're going to have to say on this, because I think this is really going to provide some fantastic value to, frankly, anyone for that matter. This does not just need to be a student or an educator. I mean, this can benefit almost anyone.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you, man, that, honestly, residency is something that I really, wanted early on. And personally, I don't think I had the right mindset at the time, and therefore my personality and my heart was not in the right place, and that's why I don't believe I got it at that time. And you know what? I think that's one of the best decisions and best things that could have happened to me, looking back, because it forced me to change. But I really, honestly, still kind of want to go back and kind of redo that now, because I feel like now, in terms of with my vision and where I want to go, I mean, I'm still not 100% sure exactly where I want to go yet. But one thing is for certain, I want to contribute in whatever way I can to help physical therapist education advance in whatever way I can to help make it better. Now, I'm not an expert on this by any means. I'm frankly a nobody, just trying to learn about it and contribute to what I can. But I realize that the first step for me to do that is to really get better clinically, and to really learn and develop and kind of learn more about how to really be an effective clinician with utilizing all the best research. And I feel like going through that phase of development and also kind of maybe even learning more about the research process is definitely, I think, for me, the best next step. Because after that, once I got that more through and actually being able to go through with a network of, really smart and intelligent, passionate people, I can use that knowledge to better help make a difference. And, I still want to pursue. Now, what realm within, contributing to education am I going to be in? I honestly have no idea. I've kind of thought about maybe getting involved in learning about what CAPTE is, what FSBPT is, or kind of more with residency fellowship, maybe teaching for a residency fellowship program. And frankly, what's going to make more of a difference is I want to kind of talk with other people and figure out what avenue or role specifically can promote the most change to the overall problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I just think that the doors just keep opening. And I think, once you've got that nice foundational structural knowledge base, and a residency and a fellowship can offer that sometimes, once you've got that down, you can then adapt that to any one of the doors and opportunities that open for you. Literally, you can take your foundation and you can then mold it into whichever avenue you want at that point. So I see big things ahead for you, and I'm really excited for what the future holds. I'm going to give you my parting thought for the night, and then I'll let you go ahead and wrap us up. But all I have to say is, for the guests and the listeners of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast, again, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate all the support we've gotten, and it's really only motivated us to do more and be more. And, like I said, buckle up, because we've got some really big announcements, some exciting news, and some really cool guests and events on your way for 2018. So it's going to be a pretty awesome time. So stay tuned.
Really second all that Scott said, but I'd also personally like to take a moment, really, Scott, to thank you, man. And I want to also give a shout out to all the people that have also kind of helped us kind of within HEG, from Corey, Colwinder, and Ryan. And I just want to give everyone here a huge shout out and a huge thanks for all the hard work that everyone does to really help contribute to making, this project and this vision really help people out. Because honestly, at the end of the day, we look at our podcast numbers, we look at our downloads. Yeah, that's cool. But does that really matter in the end day? To me, no. What really matters and what gets me the most fired up is when I get a message from someone, either an educator or a student, they're like, you know what, Brandon, after hearing this episode, this really helped me with this problem that I was having, this really helped change my mind, or this really helped me in this aspect I was struggling with. Because I've been there.
Yeah.
I get it. I was burned out, and podcasts saved me. I get it. And to me, if we can even just help one person with that, to me, all the time and work was worth it. So, and I thank you all, the staff, all of you guys that you guys do with helping this thing come together to really help make that a reality.
Yeah, it's been quite the team effort this year, and like I said, we're only looking to grow. And, for our audience and our guests, please feel free to reach out to us at any point in time, literally for anything. We're here to help. We're here to expand. We're here to bring on some interesting guests and give you some really top-notch content. So don't ever feel afraid to contact us about anything. We love hearing the ideas and the directions you guys would like us to head, and the visions that you guys have as well, because we're all just on this journey together. So we appreciate that.
We do, and we'll probably, honestly, what we plan on doing is really doing a reflective episode. Honestly, probably every 6 months. I know this one was a little bit later than that, but I know because we were busy with a couple other things, it kind of got pushed back a little, pushed back a little bit, but that's okay. Because really we want to use these episodes as, reflection, and also kind of as a journal to really see kind of where we're at and kind of see how we change when, when the next one comes. Because really it's all about development.
Yeah, I think professional development is something that should be ongoing. Obviously, we all want to be lifelong educators and learners, so I think educational development needs to be ongoing. But, really, we just kind of want to see where this thing goes and how big we can get this. Like, we've got some pretty cool messages out there, and I think, we really need to start spreading the word to the world of healthcare, not just the physical therapy world, but let's start reaching our tentacles out a little bit, and let's start hitting up some of the other healthcare providers and getting them not only on the show but listening as well. So if you guys hear an episode that you think you could refer to any of the other healthcare providers that you work with, feel free to send it on their way, man. We would love to spread the knowledge. We just feel like the bigger the audience, the bigger the stage, the more we can help people. So looking forward to a great 2018.
And from all of us here at HET, we'd like to thank you guys all for listening and for all the support. We're going to be signing off. Thank you for attending class today, and we hope that you learned something and gained value from the content.
If you'd like to schedule office hours with us, feel free to add us on Twitter at HET Podcast, on Instagram, HET Podcast, on Facebook, the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast, and the homepage, healthcareeducationtransformationpodcast.com.
And for those of you following along in the syllabus, extra credit can be obtained by liking us, sharing us, and leaving a review.
Let's continue our journey up Mount Educational Success as lifelong learners.